If he wrote, please follow me and answer this. Answer this directly. Don't come up with another analogy. Answer this.
No,
If he wrote down, I'm going to wake up and brush my teeth at 10:50. Can I wake up and brush my teeth at 11 instead?
you can do whatever you want, but he's already written down what you've already done because he has knowledge of the future.
So PowerisforAllah, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? You good?
I'm pretty good, man.
Sorry, I thought that he was going to select Bra to join. I wasn't expecting, but it's fine.
Nope. Picked you.
Cool. No, I just had a couple of questions, really.
Sure.
So yeah, I didn't want to I don't think I have enough knowledge to challenge, but I just had a couple of questions because I think obviously when I watch videos on Speaker's Corner and stuff, nobody really answers these questions as much as I want them to, and I've asked a couple of questions and they're not well versed on these subjects, so I thought I'd ask you.
I'll try my best.
So the first one is regarding the Gospels. So I read quite a few material out there that suggests that the Gospels were written by anonymous authors. What's your position on this?
So they're not anonymous in the sense that we don't know who they are. The autographs, meaning the original scripts, they don't have their names on them, so they're anonymous in that sense. They're not anonymous in the way that but we don't know who the authors are. We know exactly who the authors are. We have 2,000 years of church tradition that are consistent on who the authors are: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's never ever any disagreement on that, and so what it means if they say, oh, it's written by anonymous authors, what a scholar would mean by that is that the autographs are anonymous. They don't have the author's name on them, but traditionally we know exactly who the authors are.
So the earliest manuscripts of the Gospels don't have any authors' names on them, but
actually no. So they do. Like the earliest manuscripts that we have are copies of them, and they all have their names on them, right? But
so
the autographs don't have their names on them. So they'll all be Gospel of Jesus according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? They'll say that Gospel of Jesus according to Matthew, Gospel of Jesus according to Mark, blah, 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 blah. But they all say that. They all say gospel according to this person.
Yeah, I understand that.
But those are copies.
Okay, so the copies. But it's the copies that are the earliest, right?
The copies are the earliest. Yeah, we don't.
The copies are the earliest. You don't have the originals.
Correct.
Okay, so the copies are the earliest, and the copies don't have any autographs on them.
The copies have their names on them, but the copies, like you're not going to have in the gospel John say, I am John writing this, or I am Matthew writing this. You don't have that. You don't have their autographs on there. But what you do have is,
how did they come into circulation? Like how? Because obviously, if we don't know who wrote them,
no, we do know. No, brother.
No. You're saying the copies. I mean, I'm talking about the copies. Like, how did the copies end up in circulation? Because you don't have the originals, but you've got the copies, right? So
So what we have is we have the apostles who also had apostles who what we call church fathers and bishops, right? And then we have apostolic succession. So people who succeeded the apostles, right? Who came after them or who were studying under them and kept passing on to the traditions. And Paul even talks about this. Paul tells Timothy, who's a younger, evangelist coming up, he's telling him, hey, hold fast to everything you learned, to the law, and the traditions passed to you. Right? And so, and we see a couple of these people mentioned, like Clement's mentioned in the Bible. And people who were close with the apostles, knew them or knew people that knew of them, learned right under them, or were, contemporaries of them. They held true to the traditions and continued to pass it on with the bishops in the different churches in Antioch, in Jerusalem, and, Ephesus and Galatia. The letters of Paul, the writings of the gospel authors were hitting all of these different places.
So the
Yeah,
language.
and you
Yeah,
never
sorry.
see any confusion. Yeah, you never see any confusion in the early church on who the authors of the gospel is. You never see it. Everyone is consistent on who it is.
Okay. My next question is, do you guys believe that Jesus spoke Aramaic? Is that
Absolutely. And
yeah?
Greek and Hebrew and possibly Latin.
Okay. So the earliest manuscripts are written in Greek, right? The ones
That's
that you have
correct.
now, the ones that
That's,
don't have an autograph on them. Would they
that's
have been
correct.
copied from? Would they have been copied from our Aramaic scripture?
Nope, because Koine Greek was the common tongue of the time and the common tongue of the common folk. So,
Okay.
and with them trying to spread their message, they're
Yeah.
going to put it in a message that is of the common tongue where everybody can understand it and get it. So, yeah, just Koine Greek is just it's a no-brainer.
But the disciples, they would have spoken in Aramaic, right? Like Jesus may have spoken in different language, but his disciples, his followers, they
All
would
of
have
them,
spoken Aramaic with him.
all of them, all of them would have spoken. Their main tongue would have been Aramaic.
Yeah.
Also would have been versed in Koine Greek since they were servants and laborers and common folk of the Roman Empire, and they were in business. Matthew was a tax collector, so he would have most likely had to know Greek and maybe some Latin as well. So he had to. These people were in business; they had to be familiar with these stuff.
Yeah. But their mother tongue would have been Aramaic.
Mother tongue would have been Aramaic and Hebrew.
Yeah. And would you have assumed that then, if they were to write about their life with Jesus, they would have written that in Aramaic?
No, not necessarily, because again, they're spreading the message to the world. So if most of the world is speaking Koine Greek, you're not going to write the gospel message in Aramaic. You're going to write it in a language that everyone understands and everyone is talking and speaking.
Okay. Does
that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a couple more questions. So just give me a sec.
Of course.
Yeah, there was.
Let me.
There was actually another question I had regarding Jesus as well. So obviously, in your belief, Jesus was crucified, right? So why was he crucified? Like, what's the reason for him being killed? Like, short answer. You don't need to go into detail.
Okay, so are you asking why the Jews put him up for crucifixion, or are you asking the grand? Okay, so the reason the Jews was accusing him of blasphemy. They accused him of blasphemy. They accused him of claiming to be God. Jesus was saying things and doing things that only God can say and do. They didn't believe he was God, and so they accused him of blasphemy and working with sorcery. They also did not like how he had an influence on the people and how they were losing their grasp on the people. And so, and he would call them out on their crap. So they wanted him out.
Okay. So would you say then the Jews that put him up for trial, it's the Romans that crucified him, right? Not the Jews.
Right.
The Jews wanted him killed, but the Romans actually crucified him. Would you say then that, because obviously you believe that he died for our sins, would you say that was a good thing then that they put him up for crucifixion? Because if he hadn't been put down, if he hadn't been killed, he would have not died for our sins. So would you say that the people that were responsible for his death was actually doing a good thing?
So it's nuanced actually. It's similar to like this. So the Bible says that God takes what men meant for evil and he turns it around for good. He uses it for good. Similar to the story of Joseph, who had it when his brothers kidnapped him and threw him into the pit. Right? Okay. Are you familiar with that story?
No, vaguely,
Joseph.
But no.
He ended up. Okay, all right, no worries. So just briefly.
Okay.
So Joseph is one of Jacob's sons. He was the youngest one, and he was favored. Anyway, the brothers were jealous of him, and they threw him in the pit and sold him off to slavery in Egypt. Now, you would say right off the back, well, they're doing an evil thing, right?
Yeah.
Kidnapping their brother, throwing him into a pit, selling him into slavery, doing an evil thing. However, when Joseph got to Egypt, he was favored by Pharaoh and the governors to where he got a high position in Egypt. And because of his position, he was able to interpret dreams. He was able to, and so Pharaoh had a dream of a famine coming to Egypt. And Joseph was able to interpret and say, yeah, there's a famine coming. This is what we should do. So because Joseph was in Egypt, he was now in a position where he can save the nation, not just Egypt, but the surrounding ones that depended on him, like his family in Canaan. They were also dependent on Egypt. So if this never happened, if he was never thrown in the pit and never sold into slavery, he would not have been in a position to save the nation. So yes, what they were doing initially was evil, but God turned it for good. God meant it for good. And it's the same thing with crucifixion. These men meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And God's plan ultimately succeeds over there.
Would you say then it was sort of predestined for them to want to kill Jesus and to kill him for the forgiveness of our sins? Like, would you say that God sort of ordained that to happen? Like, it had to go through this route. Like, someone had to be selected. There had to be a group of people that were against Jesus. Otherwise, if there wasn't, let's say in the ideal world, Jesus came down and did all this stuff and no one wanted to kill him, this would never have happened. So would you say that God sort of made it happen?
I wouldn't say that God made it happen. I would say that it was in his will to happen. I would say that God had this plan. He already knew what was going forth, and he set this plan in order. And somehow, some way, it was going to get to the crucifixion of Jesus. I wouldn't say that God specifically, fixed the hearts of those particular individuals to go against Jesus, but that people were going to go against Jesus regardless, and he was going to end up being crucified. I would say that was in his ordained plan, not the heart of the person.
Yeah, but at an individual level, you would say that God will have to, in a way, right? He would need to say, well, these set of people need to turn against Jesus and put him up for crucifixion. Like, otherwise, I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying. Like, isn't it that God would have to put it into the hearts of those individuals to want to kill Jesus in order for him to be crucified?
Nope, not at all. Not at all. If you have, you also have this phrase in the Bible where it talks about how God hardens certain people's hearts, or in another phrase to say it, he gives them over to themselves. So like when God takes his hand off of you, he gives you over to yourself, and now you succumb to your own sin, your own pride. There's no way to do that without God's help. So he lifts his hand off of you, hardened. So your heart's hardened. You're rebelling and going against God regardless. And I think that's an example of that God gives these people over to themselves. They hate the Messiah, and there's no recovery from that because God has taken his hand off of them.
Because there are obviously people in life that, they're rebellious, but they turn to God later on in life after some time. So you'd agree that God sometimes would, like you said, take his hand off and kind of lead them to it, or he keeps his hand on and he guides them later on, after they've made their mistakes or at some point in their life.
Yep.
Hey, Logic, can I give them another perspective?
Definitely.
It was going to be this Jesus being unalive was going to happen. It just happened when the Pharisees wanted to go to, Pontius Pilate and get him unalive and get him crucified. Even if Jesus would have lived to 50, 60, 80, 100, he still would have been unalive for the sins of the world. Because if you read in Matthew, they say that Jesus perceived that the Israelites wanted to make him king, and as long as Rome had jurisdiction over that area, Palestine and Jerusalem, anyone that the people try to anoint a king over Caesar, they was gonna take him out. So as long as Jesus was there doing miracles, getting more popular, he was going to eventually become a threat to the Romans anyway. So the Romans probably anyway would have ended up
unless the Romans accepted him, right? In what you're saying, like unless the Romans accepted through his miracles, he is king, right? This guy.
But they would have went against their government to do that, and they had the power. They weren't gonna let that happen. Any type of insurrection, they always stomp it out.
But in the hypothetical scenario that I'm saying, if they were to, like, let's say for example, I'm in the UK. Right?
The only thing I'm trying to get to you is that God didn't set a certain group of people hearts to be hardened against Jesus to do this crucifixion. It was going to happen inevitably, some type of way, shape, or form.
But God logic, you said that God sort of took his hands off these people and their hearts became hardened, and then they went against Christ, right? That's
he leads them to themselves. He leads them to themselves.
But he didn't he didn't ordain this certain person, like this guy is going to do it, this guy is going to do it. He didn't do that.
But he would have had to taken his hands off specific individuals for their hearts to be hardened in order for them to go against Christ.
Yeah, it's a thing where God says that he has mercy on who he has mercy on, and he leaves for destruction who he chooses, right? And so
so who he chooses, God, you'd say that God chooses specific individuals.
There are specific. Let me say this. There are specific individuals that God will take his hand off to bring out his accomplishment, what he planned. And for these people, notice it's due to their sin already. It's due to their sin. It's due to their rebellion, to where God says, okay, fine, takes his hand off, leaves them and gives them over to their desires, to where there is no turn back for them.
So,
and so that's what this is.
Those individuals that he takes his hands off, they have no way back to God, you're saying? And it's almost like they've committed so much sin now, it's like, hey, you're going to go to hell anyway. So
unless God decides to show them mercy and restores their heart in some way, God knows best, but in what he does and how he does it. So it's not that it's impossible for them to go back, but without God, without him, we can't. We need, like, faith is a gift from God, it's a gift. So we need his help. There's even a time where Jesus was healing a man, and he healed him and said, "Do you believe? Like, do you believe I'm the Messiah?" And he responded to Jesus and said, "Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. Help it. Help me where I am not believing." And so it's have these type of areas like that.
Cool. Okay, I'll move on to my next question.
Really quick, before you move on to your next one, there was something that you made a statement about. You were saying, so God must have, and this was from your understanding. So I was getting that you had the understanding that God placed in these men's heart to crucify Christ. Is this sort of a position that you're coming from Islamically?
No. I'm basically trying to, because I'm just trying to understand, like, what are the position of the people in the hereafter, the people that crucified Jesus? Because for us, I mean, we don't obviously believe he was crucified. We believe that these people who wanted to kill him are going to go to hell for sure, because they're trying to kill a prophet, right? We don't believe that they succeeded because God saved him from crucifixion. But if we just put that aside for now, and let's just imagine in a world where he was crucified. Let's say I believe he was crucified. If I believe he was crucified, I want to understand those people that crucified him, is what they did right? Like, is that a good thing? Because him being crucified saves everyone else, it saves the whole of humanity, or is what they've done a bad thing in the sense that because of that they're going to go hell?
Well, I believe in a sense I was so that question was answered by logic. What I was trying to get
I haven't
was
asked about whether they're going to go to hell, like whether they're going to be punished for killing Jesus. But
yeah, well, I
yes,
mean,
you'll
well,
agree.
we're not we're not
Yeah, the
we're not
answer is
we're not
yes.
God. We don't. Yeah, we're not God. We don't have heaven or hell to put somebody in, but I assume that those people are going to hell.
Yeah, know what you know, like whether they're going to hell or heaven, but what you believe.
Yeah, but my thing was is as far as being preordained, were you posing that as an argument for something that would falsify Christianity? Like if that was something that was
No. I don't
preordained?
think that's going to falsify Christianity, because in some sense we believe that God has knowledge of all things. He has knowledge of what's to come. So he already knows, because if he didn't, then, in a way, how would a prophet prophesize of what's to come in the future if God hasn't already written what's to come? So I'm not saying,
no.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying.
So that's sort of an issue, because I would say if we were to say yes, God preordained this, which means that he created these people and ordered them to do these things, placed upon their hearts to go and crucify Christ. I would say that would falsify Christianity if God sent these people to go crucify Christ. And so if you're saying that you don't have a problem with that, which is the reason why I was asking you, because we do know that in Islam there is a position of Allah, preordaining things for people. But usually when we try to have the conversation about Allah preordaining things for certain people, even when it comes by way of evil, it turns into, well, no, he just knows what they're going to do. So in a sense, when you use preordained, are you saying that Allah knows what people are going to do, or is he the one making these people do these things?
That's a good question, actually. I think God knows what's going to happen. Like, he already knows what you're going to do tomorrow, but it doesn't mean he's made you do it. He just knows that you're going to do these things because he has knowledge of all things.
Perfect. So in connection with the question that you asked, it seemed as if you were asking if God made these men crucify Christ.
And that's my question.
Yeah, so the answer to that was no, and I'm saying if that was the case, would that be a problem?
No. What? Sorry.
So you're okay with God? Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So you're okay with God preordaining things like that. So if we were to say yes, you would be like, okay, fine.
No, I don't think I'll be okay with it.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah, he's saying that'll be a problem. He's saying that'll be a problem with God.
But he just said it wasn't. But he just said it won't be a problem like 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
No, I
wait.
said
So wait.
Well,
So let me clarify really quick so we can.
My position.
Yeah, really quick. Let me just re-ask the question because I'm a little confused. So if we were to say yes, God preordained for these men by way of making these men crucify Christ, right? Putting it on their hearts, and they cannot overcome the fact that they have to get Christ crucified. You said
that would be a problem. Yes.
Okay, right. So that would mean that
I'm not using that to falsify Christianity whatsoever. I just want to understand.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying. So now what I'm saying is so you do have a problem with a God preordaining evil for specific men, right? Like he's the one making these men do this, right?
He's the one. Well, it'll be similar to what God Logic said, in the sense that these people obviously are committing sin and they're bad people, and God
but because it's preordained for them though, right? So they have no choice but to do it.
Well, we have free will to do whatever we want to do. So they don't. It's not like they don't have any choice. They have the choice to do whatever they want to do. If they didn't have to do it.
He's asking, do you have a problem with the idea of God preordaining people's evil actions? Like, it's not that it was their free choice to do it, but God himself is the one who basically made them do it. Like he wrote for them that they're gonna do this, and they don't have a choice to go outside of what God wrote for them. Do you have a problem with that idea?
It's a hard question to answer, only because how, as a human being, how do we know what God wrote for us? Like, for example, has he written for me to go to paradise? Has he written for me to go to hell?
Yeah,
I have the free will to do whatever I want to do. So I don't think I don't believe that. I don't believe God, like, in the sense that, we have free will to do whatever we want to do. So regardless of what he wrote for us or what he didn't write for us, it's up to us because we have free will. Like, it's my
If he wrote it for you, then you don't have free will, right? Because you didn't choose that. He wrote it for you to choose it, right?
But I still have the choice, so I have free will.
No, you
can't
don't.
have
If
a
it's
choice.
preordained, you don't have a choice. You have to do it. If God preordained something for you,
But
you have no
He's
choice
preordained
that you're
something?
gonna do that.
It doesn't matter if you know it. It doesn't matter if you know it or not. The fact is that you could even have this illusion that you freely chose this action, when really God is the one that preordained this action that you're carrying out. Like, you can have this illusion that it was your free choice to hop on this stream today, when really Allah is the one who wrote for you to hop on the stream.
He has knowledge of what I'm going to do.
I'm not talking about knowledge, not for knowledge.
Yeah, that's not preordained.
I'm
So
talking
when
about
Muslims use
causality.
preordained, you gotta understand the word that you're using. Preordained is not simply foreknowledge. It's an order. It's an action that you have to do. This is not something that Allah is saying, hey, I know you're gonna do this, so I'm gonna write this down for you. Preordained is a completely different word. That's not Allah just knowing what you're gonna do.
So this is my position, and I'll make this simple, and I won't use any of the words that I've used before or what you've used, and I'll just put it simple. God has knowledge of all things, so he knows what's to come. Like the way, for example, in the old, let's take your Old Testament as an example. He would send down revelation that would prophesize on things to come in the future, because those things have already been written, and those prophets are using the information that they receive from God of what's happening in the future as a way to validate that they're prophets, right? So the way I see it is that God has knowledge of all things. He knows what's to come. He knows what you're going to do, but you have free will to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, so that's not what we're asking. We understand your position. Our question is, if God wrote for you an action, is that you free willing to do that action, or did Allah make you do that action?
Allah knows what I'm going to do. So I already have free will, and he knows what I'm going to do. That's it.
So again, notice how I'm not asking about foreknowledge. No, I'm not asking about foreknowledge. I'm not like, it's not like I'm watching a replay of a football game. I watched the game before, and now the replay is on, and so I know what's going to happen. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like as if you have characters in a storybook, and and there's an author who writes down everything a character will say, will do, will think, how they will move. That's what I'm talking about.
But the characters don't have
free will.
But the characters don't have free will.
Okay.
Because what you're saying, you're basically creating like a movie, and you're saying you're gonna have to do these things, and you're giving instructions to these people to walk this way, or to talk this way, or to sit down, or to stand up. God's not. I can't hear God in a microphone in my ears to say, "Hey, you're gonna miss your prayer." Neither
can the characters in my story. Neither can the characters in my story. The characters in my story are going along with the story, not knowing that it was already written by me. You get what I'm saying? So they can have this illusion that they're moving along in this life according to their own free will and what they do and what happens in life, as if it's their actions that cause it or whatever, when really I wrote everything down already. I wrote down what they're going to do. I wrote down what they're going to say and what's going to happen.
It's slightly different from the analogy that you're using because because when we say that Allah has knowledge of all things, we know He knows the future. He knows what you're going to do because you have free will.
I know what you're saying.
You're saying I'm writing something that you're going to do and you're going to follow my instructions because I'm the producer.
My question is it free will? Is that free will if I write down the actions of somebody? Is that free will? Does that person have free will if I wrote down their actions?
If they have free will to do whatever they want to do, then yeah, it's free will. Even if you know what's to come.
All right, so can they go against what I wrote for them?
Can they go against what you wrote for them? Well, if you already know what they're going to do, then logically it makes sense.
No, so if I write down for them an action, can they go against the action that I write down for them?
But you're not writing down. Okay, can I give you an analogy? It's gonna make a lot more sense.
I don't get it because he just was asking the same thing, but flipped around on Christianity. But once it's flipped around back to Islam, now he don't understand what we're talking about. Yeah. He was just asking, did God preordain these people to unalive Jesus on the cross? Did he set that in their hearts for them? But now that we're asking the same thing flipped around towards Islam, oh no, now he doesn't understand the concept.
No, I didn't say I don't understand it. I'm trying to explain our concept, but you're not understanding what I'm saying. Okay, let me put it this way.
We know.
We understand wholeheartedly.
No, I want you to know that we understand what you're saying. As a matter of fact, I'm a still man your position. Let me still man it. I'm a still man your position. Your position is that God has foreknowledge. He's all knowing.
Yes.
So he already knows what is going to happen, what you're going to do, and stuff like that. And his knowledge doesn't affect your free choice. He just knows what you're freely going to do. Yeah. That's what your position is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to know we understand.
So like, for example, I said God Logic is going to wake up late tomorrow. Not because I'm telling him that he's going to wake up late tomorrow, because I know.
It's because you know.
You just know what. Yeah, you know that. You know the future. You know what he's going to do. Yeah.
So now, so you see how we understand your position. Now understand what I'm asking you, because I'm not asking about foreknowledge, all knowingness. I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about the causality of an action. Whether, because we know Allah's knowledge doesn't determine someone's action. He just knows what they're going to do. Okay. I'm talking about whether God, himself makes the action. So if he writes down the action, not just knows that I'm going to wake up today and brush my teeth, starting with my left hand, but he writes down that I'm going to wake up today at this time and I'm going to brush my teeth with my right hand, starting with my left.
Yeah.
Is that my free will, or is that what he has made happen?
That's free will. He's already written what you're gonna do.
Okay, so can I go against what he wrote for me?
Well, obviously not, because you've already done it.
Well, I didn't do it. I haven't done anything yet.
He knows you've already. He knows, because he has knowledge of all things. He already knows what you're gonna do.
So if he wrote down for me that I'm gonna brush my teeth at 10:50, can I choose when I wake up to not brush my teeth until 11?
If you chose to not brush your teeth at 10:15, or let's say to wake up at 8 a.m., then that would have been written.
No, I'm asking about what he's written. If he wrote, please follow me and answer this. Answer this directly. Don't come up with another analogy. Answer this. If he wrote down, I'm going to wake up and brush my teeth at 10:50. Can I wake up and brush my teeth at 11 instead?
You can do whatever you want. But he's already written down what you've already done because he has knowledge of the future.
So can I go against what he wrote down for me?
That doesn't make sense because he's not writing for it. So he's not writing it down as instructions for you to action. He's writing down of what's happening in the future.